So you want to own a football stadium. Picture it. 80,000 seats, filled to capacity on a Saturday afternoon, chanting rolling through the stands like weather. Beer taps running nonstop. Parking lots packed with tailgaters hours before kickoff. Broadcast trucks parked outside, beaming the game to millions of homes. It looks like the ultimate cash machine, an asset that fills itself, week after week, season after season, without you lifting a finger. And for a few hours on game day, that illusion holds up perfectly. But here's what almost nobody outside the industry understands. A football stadium, on its own, is one of the worst performing real estate assets you can own. It sits empty roughly 355 days a year. And the actual money in modern stadium economics rarely comes from the people sitting in the seats at all. That's only the beginning. The real story starts long before opening day. Let's start with what a stadium actually sells. On the surface, tickets. But structurally, a modern stadium is closer to a real estate and media rights business that happens to host football games, built to extract revenue from every possible surface, moment, and broadcast signal it can generate. The game itself is almost secondary to the machinery built around it. Here's why people assume this is an obviously profitable asset. NFL teams alone generated combined league revenue exceeding $20 billion in recent seasons, with national broadcast deals distributing roughly $400 million annually to each team regardless of stadium attendance. A single sold-out NFL game, with average ticket prices exceeding $100 and premium suites running into the tens of thousands per game, can generate several $million in ticket revenue alone in a single afternoon. That sounds like an extraordinary business, until you look at what it actually costs to build and operate the building itself. Modern stadium construction has become staggeringly expensive. SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles opened in 2020, cost approximately $5 billion, making it the most expensive stadium ever built. Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas cost roughly $2 billion. Even stadiums built a decade earlier, like MetLife Stadium, cost well over $1.6 billion. These aren't one-time expenses absorbed easily by ticket sales. They're financed through a mix of team ownership capital, private loans, and, controversially, public funding, with taxpayer contributions to major stadium projects in the U.S., frequently running into the hundreds of millions of dollars per project. This is where the business gets politically complicated in a way few other industries face. Team owners routinely argue that new stadiums generate local economic activity significant enough to justify public subsidy. Economists studying these claims have repeatedly reached a very different conclusion. Multiple independent academic studies, including research published by the Brookings Institution, have found that publicly funded stadiums generally fail to generate the promised local economic growth, with the benefits concentrated heavily in team ownership rather than surrounding communities. So if construction costs are this enormous, how does anyone recoup that investment? The answer lies almost entirely in revenue streams that have nothing to do with whether a fan bought a ticket. Naming rights deals alone have become extraordinary revenue sources. SoFi's naming rights deal with the stadium is reported to be worth over $30 million annually across a 20-year term, one of the largest naming rights agreements ever signed. Allegiant Stadium's naming rights deal runs at roughly $25 to $30 million a year as well. These deals get paid whether the team wins, loses, or the stadium sits half full on a rainy Tuesday for a concert. Then there's the suite and premium seating economy, which has quietly become the financial backbone of modern stadium design. Luxury suites sold on multi-year leases to corporations rather than individual fans can run anywhere from $100,000 to over $1 million annually, depending on the market and stadium. Unlike single-game ticket sales, this revenue is locked in through long-term contracts, giving ownership predictable cash flow that doesn't fluctuate with a losing season the way general ticket demand does. But here's where almost everyone underestimates the real engine driving stadium profitability: non-football event bookings. A stadium that only hosts 8 to 10 NFL games a year is an underused asset by any real estate standard. This is why modern stadiums are built explicitly to host concerts, soccer matches, college football games, motocross events, and even corporate conventions. SoFi Stadium has hosted the Super Bowl, major concert tours, and international soccer friendlies, each event generating its own ticket revenue, concession sales, and parking fees entirely independent of the NFL season. Some newer stadiums now target upwards of 200 non-team event days annually, transforming the building from a once-a-week football venue into something closer to a year-round entertainment district. This is also where concessions and parking, small on a per-transaction basis, add up in ways that mirror what makes movie theaters profitable. Beer at an NFL stadium commonly sells for $12 to $15. Food items marked up well beyond retail cost and parking, often $40 to $80 per vehicle, generates revenue that requires almost no additional labor cost once the infrastructure exists. Multiplied across 70,000 attendees at a single event, these numbers compound quickly into millions in additional revenue that never appears on a broadcast graphic. And then there's the risk almost nobody accounts for when picturing this business: dependency on a single tenant. Unlike an apartment complex or an office tower with dozens of independent tenants, a stadium's primary anchor is usually a single sports franchise. If that team relocates, as the Rams and Chargers did when they left St. Louis and San Diego for Los Angeles, or as the Raiders did when they left Oakland for Las Vegas, the stadium that once anchored a city's sports economy can be left with a devastating revenue gap, sometimes with public debt still being paid off on a stadium the team no longer plays in. St. Louis famously continued paying off debt on the Edward Jones Dome for years after the Rams departed, a case frequently cited in economic studies as a cautionary example of stadium financing risk borne disproportionately by taxpayers rather than team owners. This is where the fragility of the model becomes visible in real financial terms. A stadium's entire economic viability rests on decisions made largely by team ownership and league scheduling. Factors the actual stadium operator, if separate from the team, often has limited control over. So who actually succeeds in this business long term? The stadiums that thrive share a consistent pattern. They diversify revenue aggressively beyond football, treating the building as a year-round entertainment venue rather than a once-a-week sports facility. They lock in long-term, high-value contracts for naming rights and premium suites that provide predictable cash flow independent of team performance. And increasingly, ownership groups structure deals to minimize public financial exposure and relocation risk, aware that a stadium's value is only as stable as the tenant playing inside it. So is owning a football stadium actually worth it? The honest answer depends entirely on what you're actually building. As a business dependent on ticket sales from 8 home games a year, the math simply doesn't justify billion-dollar construction costs. But as a diversified entertainment and media rights asset, anchored by football but sustained by concerts, naming rights, premium suites, and year-round bookings, a modern stadium can become one of the most valuable pieces of real estate a city has to offer, provided its owner never mistakes it for merely a place to watch a game. The next time you walk into a packed stadium on game day, remember what you're actually standing inside. It isn't just a football venue. It's a billion-dollar media and real estate machine, engineered to generate revenue long after the final whistle blows and long before kickoff ever begins.